Welcome to Save Our Sleep. Tizzie and the Save Our Sleep team believe it's every child's right to receive comfort, a parent's right to demonstrate love, and everyone's right to a full night of sleep. This podcast is not a medical or scientific volume, but a collection of tried and tested solutions and tips based on my many years of experience with babies and young children. Its main purpose is to help parents understand and avoid sleep problems in young babies and toddlers.
We'd like to recognise the Wadawurrung people who are the traditional owners of this region, which Tizzie and myself live and are recording today's podcast on. We acknowledge and respect that they have taken care of this land and water and raised children in this nation for over an extraordinary 70,000 years. The Save Our Sleep podcast is dedicated to helping you prevent and solve sleep problems while having some fun along the way. We endeavour to discuss all things family related, starting from pre-conception all the way through to an adult child leaving home and beyond. Some topics may be triggering. If you find this is the case, please reach out to your or your child's health nurse or general practitioner.
Hello.
Hello.
And what's the crack? And welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Save Our Sleep podcast.
Very
Let's
excited.
talk all things babies with Tizzie Hall, author of Save Our Sleep, and the sitting in for Zoe Starr. How long are we going to call you that? Kylie Szabo, who
Hi.
is a sleep consultant and friend and colleague
Yes.
and works in the support group as much as I do, likes to help lots of mums in the support group and moderates it. Anyway, here we are. Welcome back. So we were talking, so we are going to just have a bit of a chat, about a topic.
Sure.
And I mean, I think people would be very bored if we talked about the fact that my kids are now back at school. Your kids, well, we're recording, this won't go to air for like 3 or 4 weeks. So last week when we recorded, your children were back at school and
They
my
were.
children were back at school because the more you pay, the less they go. So because my children go to a school in Geelong,
I think mine would like that.
we pay for it. They get an extra week for skiing holidays. But if you can't afford to go skiing, then what's the point? So they get an extra week at this time of year to cover the skiing holidays, going to the snow,
wow.
but we didn't get to go to the snow.
That's
My
interesting.
children are now back at school and, life's just annoying taking them to and from school. Anyway, that's it. It
know.
gets harder.
It does.
Believe me, everybody, you enjoy these newborn baby stages because I often say to people, now's the time to go out and get a job and work because you can drop your kids at daycare, pick them up from daycare, it's easy. Once your kids start school, trying to work and have children at school is absolutely impossible. And the mum guilt, that's a topic that we really need to cover. I mean, I just feel, I could burst into tears now. I feel
It is
guilty all the time. I have so much mum guilt. I have mum guilt because my children never see their grandmother, their nana, my mum, my mum, okay? And especially with COVID. I have mum's guilt because I was my mum's baby. Like I was her baby girl and I went to the other side of the world. I have mum guilt because my children, like I talked in one of the podcasts about Kieran coming second in cross country and I didn't watch him. I wasn't there. Or
It's so
it's just
hard, isn't it?
awful. It's this, I don't know, you just, no one tells you about how everything, there's lots of positives, but you also feel pretty crappy when your kids are our kids'
You
age.
do. And
I'm
people
at
are
this
so
age-
judgmental.
Oh, I'm just at this age, maybe I shouldn't spoil it for our listeners, but I'm at this age where I keep going on about perimenopause. I'm at this age where my hormones are leaving and the boys'
Boys are
hormones
starting.
are coming and it's just this mass cauldron of hormones and
Oh, yeah.
craziness. And
We've got Hormone City in our house. It's, oh, God.
why didn't we have hormones when we were kids?
I'm sure our parents would tell a different story, but I swear I was good.
Anyway, so we just want to talk about different topics each week. And And this week, what was it that I was saying? I want to talk about how did you want to add anything about your kids in school or hormones or?
Oh,
just-
I miss them being toddlers and bopping around to the music. The hormones are crazy. And like you said, the mum guilt is just insane.
And yet we thought it was bad when they were babies.
Yeah.
And now it's like, and then it's like,
They can talk back now too.
But you've got to get them out of bed, drive them to school, get them to school, pick them up from school, be back at school at lunchtime for a recital, which you can't go to because you're a working mum, or be back in school in the evening, or they've then got drama, or they've got dance. Or you can't afford it. Like trying to explain to your kids, no, you can't do all the activities that everybody else does because we can't afford all the activities, especially since COVID.
It's hard.
My children get shocked when I turn around and I say to them, no, we can't have takeaway because we can't afford it. And they're like, what? And you know what? We can to a certain degree afford it, but I don't want them to think that you can just have everything. I want them to learn. And the other day, we were talking about dime blankets again. My boys are dime blankets. I'm loving making these rainbow blankets.
You are.
And the other day, Kieran turned around and he said, oh, but now the dye's free. And I'm like, what do you mean the dye's free? And he's like, and what he meant was, I now stock it in my shop, so he thought it was free. Like all of my friends, my child has turned into my friend. All of my friends think they can just come to my shop and get free stuff because I must get it free.
Oh, wow.
I have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Not all of my friends, a lot of them. Anyway, I suppose we better stop talking about the kids and move on to the topic. So I wanted to talk a bit about, I think it's really unfair. We talked about when you were having our babies and C-sections and births, and they're not always perfect. But, I think I've been watching Zoe, and she won't mind me saying this, but I've been like watching Zoe and the baby. And, Zoe was like, I'm going to follow Save Our Sleep from day one. And she's done a bloody good job at trying to. But she'll tell you her story, but she has put on her Zoe Star All Things Mum Things, or you'll find it's linked to from the podcast, how it didn't go perfectly. She had a bit of trauma, and then she had a C-section, and then she got COVID, and the baby got COVID, and it didn't go perfectly. But what I kept saying to her was, you've got to stop feeling guilty about the boy. She was feeling really, really guilty. It's like she felt, and I could be interpreting Zoe incorrectly here, but I felt like she felt that she all of a sudden wasn't the same mum she was to the boys. And she suddenly had this baby, and she was giving all her time to the baby, and she wasn't giving any time to the boys. And eventually Luke had decided, her husband, to take the boys away, and Zoe'd come to stay. I said, well, come and stay with me for a couple of days. And it was really well timed because Luke decided to go to his sister's or something, and Zoe came to stay with me. And which wouldn't have happened because she didn't want to leave the boys, but because Luke wanted to take the baby, and Zoe couldn't travel because she had a medical issue, which she'll explain at some point, etc. And I said, come and stay with me for a couple of days. And it got me to this whole thinking. And in the podcast a couple of shows ago, in the middle of the week, we put up a podcast with the recovery, pregnancy and recovery wear. Yep. And Kylie, I think it's called, and Monica, and she's from Indonesia. And it got me thinking, about this whole 40 days staying home. Now, it's really unfair. I go back to the fact that our mums are set up to fail with the breastfeeding. Yeah. They're just set up to fail. Like, yes, bottle feeding is really, really hard, and it's really difficult, and there's not enough support around bottle feeding mums. And you and I have both bottle fed at least one of our babies. I breastfed as much as I could, like you, and then we moved to bottles. But we won't go into all that just now. Yeah. But what I do want to talk about is, we're set up to fail as breastfeed, or even bottle feeding mums. But as breastfeeding mums, you're definitely set up to fail because in some countries, now I have this little confession, right? So do you remember years ago? Do you remember I did a talk at Cold Storage? Do you know what that is?
No.
So in Singapore, do you remember I went to Singapore?
Yeah.
Yes. So Cold Storage is in Singapore, right? And I got invited to go over to Singapore. Like, Cold Storage is like David Jones. Okay. And they have these big shops, and they have food courts, and all the rich and famous in Singapore, all the expats shop at Cold Storage. And I got invited to go to Cold Storage and do these talks for these mums. And I very quickly worked out about this whole confinement thing where they stay home for 40 days and they couldn't come. They couldn't come to the talks because they were doing this confinement. And all of these women wanted to get permission to come to the talk, and I found it really strange. And then I got brought into a Singapore, I won't name the name, but a Singapore online mums forum chat, a Facebook group, and they all talk in there. Do you know what their helpers are?
No.
So they all talk about the help and the helpers, and I lie in bed at night reading these stories, and most of them just bitch about their help.
Oh, no.
Like, here's an example. So there's one woman, and she comes on and she says, I think I need to fire my help. she's cooking me Western food. She's not cooking me Singaporean food. And she's in the kitchen talking to the nanny, and I can hear her. And she's talking to the nanny. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, she's upset because her helper, who she has hired to help her 24 hours a day with her new baby, is talking to the nanny and all this. And it's like, so what, And so these expats, not all of them, some of them in this group, have a nanny to mind their toddlers. They have a helper. They call the nanny the help as well, to mind them. She brings them the baby to breastfeed. She then takes the baby and burps it and changes the nappy, brings it back, and she cooks. In this woman wanted Singaporean food. She was cooking a Western food, probably trying to do the right thing for her. All this mum has to do is make milk. They're not even allowed to wash their hair. Did you know that?
No.
They don't even wash their hair for 40 days. Okay. Wow. Maybe it's to keep the dads away. Have no more babies. Anyway, so all she has to do is make milk. And what this has got to do with Zoe, our clock's telling us it's 1,300 hours for some strange reason. What this has got to do with Zoe is that Zoe came along to stay at my house, and all she had to do was make milk. So Zoe is a bit anxious and saying, she doesn't know if the routine's working perfectly. And she's supposed to be anxious. She's a new mum. Yep. She comes to my house. Routine works perfectly. Baby behaves perfectly. Why? Because she went to Singapore. Nathan made her breakfast. Nathan made her coffees. Actually, she did make me a coffee one day. And then all I did was give out to her because I realised I'd broken my fast because I had a coffee at 7 o'clock in the morning. Anyhow, I'm trying to fast for my bowel and it's really helping. All she got to do was feed the baby, feed Lars. And then I would bring, so all she got to do was make milk. Well, then it got me to thinking, right? Now, when you have a baby, think about it. First of all, I had another friend who had a vaginal birth. It sounds like the easiest birth you could possibly have. Honestly, the baby just came out so easily, right? Second baby, vaginal birth, so easy. She was private. She stayed in hospital for 5 days and 5 nights. Mm-hmm. Zoe had birth trauma, and if you go to her Instagram page, you'll work out just how bad it was. I think she should have been in hospital for 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. She got sent out after 2 days.
Well, that's the thing. Like, people don't realise is that cesareans are major abdominal surgery, and yet you're kicked out of hospital straight away, and you're and you're responsible for looking after a human being.
And sometimes you're a single mum.
Yeah.
And in Zoe's case, you get kicked out with COVID. Your husband's got COVID, your twins have got COVID, and then a week later your baby's got COVID. Yeah. And not only was she kicked out having had a C-section, but there was other stuff, which you can find out if you ask her, if you're in the support group, or if you go, no, it's ridiculous.
It is.
Okay, and then, but if she was private, why is it like, and then the word, this really bugs me, I was private, okay? I'm not anti-private, but people who are private often can afford to get a bit more help. Not always, but sometimes. Like I'm not talking about my clients who go public and my clients who go private are all in the same boat. But I'm talking about people who have absolutely nothing. Like, let's say refugees who've come from another country. Well, they probably actually have more, so it's probably not a good example because they've probably got lots of family and friends. But you know what I'm saying. Sometimes it's the people who need the most help that get kicked out of hospital the soonest.
Yep.
Right. So then picture this, If you hired yourself someone, or if you had a mum living close by, whatever, to do everything for you. Instead, what happens in today's society in Australia, I don't know what happens in Ireland because I haven't had babies in Ireland, but I've watched my clients in Australia, right? And what happens is they're sitting at home and the door knocks and a visitor comes and the visitor brings them a nice, beautiful outfit for the baby and then expects them to make them a cup of tea, cut them a slice of cake. They've had major surgery, or they've pushed a baby out and they're cut from left to right, or they've had a perfect birth but they're still bleeding, or whatever.
Or they're trying to establish breastfeeding.
They've got milk leaking out of their boobs.
Yeah.
And they have got to make this person a cup of tea, whatever. And sometimes the person brings their toddler who tears your house apart. Then you've got to clean up after them. You've got to hoover up the crumbs. You've got to say, it's not fair. And where's all the people who are supposed to bring you all the soups and all the food? And why do we all give people nice, pretty baby gifts? Why don't we start making people food. And soups and bringing them stuff? And why don't we accept it? Here you go. Why don't we accept it? Right. Here's an example. Okay. I don't understand this about me. This is about me. Okay. I'm trying to work when I had babies and I'm trying to establish breastfeeding. And if somebody said, I'll take the baby and change his nappy, I did not see this as, okay? So let's say Nathan walked in and said, oh, Dara's pooed. I'm going to go and change his nappy, and picks him up to go and change his nappy. Instead of me thinking, okay, so rational Tizzie thinks, yeah, oh, Nathan's so helpful, he's so kind, he's taking Dara and he's going to go and change his nappy. I see it as, Nathan thinks I'm an absolutely hopeless mum. I've not realised that Dara's pooed. I'm not capable of changing my old child's nappy, or if Nathan's mother offered to change the nappy, or said, oh, I'm going to take Dara and change his nappy for you. I see it as criticism. Why? Why do I see that help? So when somebody says, oh, I'm going to come around, I'm going to bring you lunch, I'm going to this or that. Oh, no, it's fine, I'll make lunch. Why? What's wrong with us? Yeah. Why do we see that as they think I can't cope? They think I'm a bad mother. They think I don't know how to look after my baby. Why? What is this?
Because we've got all this mentality. Like, I'm exactly the same. Like, I had it, you know, people would pick up the baby and I'm like, when it would cry and I'm like, oh, what, do you think I can't settle my own baby? Or, you know, all these sorts of things. Or they wanted to babysit and I'm like, what, am I failing? Am I not doing a good enough job? Am I this? Am I that? So I can totally relate, because I had the exact same feelings when it came to with my kids, especially my first. You know, by the third it was a bit more relaxed, but the first I had huge guilt and things. And I think we don't have our village anymore, and everything's so taboo now. Like, you can't talk about the fact that you're struggling, and you can't do this and you can't do that.
And you know what? Do you think I did really well as a mum? This is random, right? But I found this picture the other day of Andrea walking around the warehouse. Andrea was a warehouse, looked after the warehouse for years. Love Andrea. You know, Andrea looked after the warehouse for years. You know, it was great. Andrea used to be a chef, so she was like, Tizzie, get back in your box or whatever. You know, it was good. We got on well. And then Andrea's now moved on to other things. But Andrea, there's photos of Andrea walking around the warehouse with Kieran. I don't even remember. She had Kieran attached to her. She had Kieran in a baby pouch and she's walking around picking stock. Now, that's a village. She'd vomit over her shoulder, my baby in the baby pouch. Like, I look back and I think, like, Kylie said we were filling in passport forms. Oh, don't go on about the passport forms. I've got an appointment this afternoon at 3:30 to get these stupid passport forms done. Nathan reckons that the Australia Post deliberately tell you that you failed. It's deliberate. They just have to make you fail every time you come. And Kylie was saying that she worked for me since Cillian was 5 months old. You see, I had people there. My kids had 5 or 6 mums because I worked from home, and all these people were in my house helping. Yeah, the mum guilt's strange, isn't it?
It is. So. And, you know, I think a lot these days, because we don't have the village, because our parents are working and things, whereas...
Or they're on the other side of the world.
They are or, you know, whereas our grandparents and stuff were around, the mums typically stayed home and they raised the children and things like that. Now there is so much expectation and pressure for women to return back to the workforce and contribute to the household, because you can't afford a house and things these days without. But
I remember being raised by our neighbours.
Yeah,
like I remember,
it was a village.
Because I remember like one house, all the kids would be in it, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm going down the street to the shopping. I'll be back in an hour. Can you get me this from the post office? Can you do this?" Yeah, and different mums do different things. There's none of that anymore.
No, there's no village.
There is no village. That's what it is. There is no village. Let's call this podcast There Is No Village. That's the title of this podcast. So now a couple of other things which I just wanted to mention. So because I've got a few people in my life at the moment, so there's a couple of mums who have podcasts who are on the support group.
Yep.
And one of them, do you know who had a baby recently? Nick, I never know how her name's spelled. She had little Leo. I
remember Leo, but I can't
remember. Has the Nova podcast.
Yep.
And like she's on Nova, she has different podcasts and she's got that great channel, Instagram. And so she's had a baby and I've been watching her with her baby and she's doing Save Our Sleep, which is great. And then Zoe's had a baby and then my neighbour's had a baby, and my neighbour I don't think she does Save Our Sleep. I don't think she's necessarily going to follow Save Our Sleep, whatever. She's a vet and she knows what she's doing and she's with animals. But she feeds her baby, and I got Zoe to try it earlier and it actually worked really well. It's like she feeds her baby like a monkey. It's like she sits it on. I was watching her. She takes the baby, and it's like the baby's in a standing up position, and she puts the baby front on like a monkey does. Mm-hmm. She doesn't lie the baby on its side. I thought that was really interesting. It's like a really interesting way. Do you understand what I mean? To feed. And I'm going, that's how you should feed. It looked so much better for the baby.
and it looked like the baby wouldn't get wind. Anyway, so that was just interesting. But with all these newborns around me and watching these newborns, there's a couple of things that I wanted to mention. So one of the things was, I have noticed these mums really trying to stick to the routines in the book. Mm-hmm. And one of the things it says in the book, in the routines, is it says, have the lights dim or off during the night.
Yes.
That's not with a newborn. You can't. So if you've got a tiny little newborn baby, you wouldn't even know if they'd vomited if you had the lights off. That's saying do the night feeds. Okay, yes, it does sound like it's saying it about newborns. Look, I need to rewrite the book. It's like I'm living the book now with a newborn in my life, with all these friends with newborns, not with my own newborn, like, because I didn't use the book with my own newborn, but looking at these other people, and it's like, well,
you didn't need to.
I know, but I did use the book. That's wrong. I used the book. I used the routines, but I didn't need to go to the book to read
because
stuff
it's in your brain.
I've done babies forever. It's all I've ever done.
Yeah.
I've had foster babies. I've had real babies. I've had babies galore, you know? Give me any type of baby, any type of baby, even friends who've had stillborn babies. You know, Kylie, did you come with me to that?
Yeah.
Yes. We went to a funeral and little boy had the dizzy dog.
Yes, yeah.
Why can't I think of his name? Quick, give me his name.
Lucas.
Lucas, who was born in June.
Yep.
He was born, I'm going to say the 6th of June.
Correct.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
There you go. How random. Right. I even remembered. Give me Lucas. I'll go and give a baby a cuddle, even if they've been born sleeping. Like... Yeah. Any baby, any form of baby, I want to be around.
Yeah, they're precious.
Yes, precious, all babies. So I now looking at the book from this point of view. So I say in the book, lights off for dim at night, not with a tiny little baby, not in the first 1 or 2 weeks, not when you're trying to establish breastfeeding. You can have the lights on. You're going to be up for an hour and a half with a newborn baby at night. And then another question a lot of people ask is, on the routines, you say to feed the baby on the first week, and people ask this before they've had a baby. So if you haven't had a baby, you'll be wondering this. It says to feed the baby at 10, 1, is it 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah? And then they say, well, if I feed the baby at 1 o'clock in the morning and you say to put the baby back to bed at 2:15, what happens if the baby... Well, it's going to take you from 1 till 2:15 to feed, wind, burp, change.
I don't think they realise how long it actually takes to feed.
I always get this same question. You say to feed the baby for 6 minutes on each breast in the first few weeks. Oh, that's something I wanted to touch on as well.
Okay.
And in the first few weeks. And you, in the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
Is it 6 minutes each breast in the first 24 hours?
And then it moves to 25.
Or is it 3 minutes in the first 24 hours and 6 minutes and 9 minutes and 12 minutes? Okay. Anyway, that's only 12 minutes of feeding or something. What do you do for the other time? Well, it's not like that. So first of all, can we just talk about that for a minute? So Zoe raised a really good point, and so did this other mum. Is it Nicolia? Nicalia?
Yeah.
I can't think how her name is said.
Yeah.
First of all, not just those two, lots of people have given me the feedback. What's the minutes?
Up to 25 minutes.
No. In the first...
first week.
In the first week, when they're first born here. So is it the first day?
Yeah.
So we're day 1, 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I should never doubt myself. Okay, so these mums have said that they've been following the routine from day 1.
Yep.
And it's been, their milks come in on day 2. So it seems to be when you do your nipples properly and you don't let the baby suck, it's like they're not sore. So then the milk, I don't know what it is, but it seems to be that if you follow this routine of milking your breasts, and we talk about that in the very first podcast, go back and look. There's notes under each podcast of what's in it. Go back and look about why we do that. But if you do that, it seems to be your milk comes in faster. Now, Zoe said, well, it makes sense because if you're putting the baby on the boob and letting them suck for 6 minutes, colostrum, I didn't know this till recently, is a laxative.
Oh.
Yeah. So you actually don't want them to have too much or they're just going to get a cramp in their tummy.
Yeah.
The colostrum is supposed to push that first poo out.
Oh.
Yeah. As well as all the antibodies and everything else it gives. I never knew that.
No.
Now, there's not 6 minutes worth in there.
No.
So you let the baby suck, that's where the 3 minutes is. You let the baby suck for 3 minutes, you get them off and win them.
Yeah.
3 minutes, get them off and win them. Well, as Zoe said, but what's all you're doing, and I thought this was great when we were talking about it afterwards, she said, all you're doing, And then I said, Banjaxed. All you're doing is letting your baby suck a nipple. There's no colostrum in there. You only get a couple of mils of colostrum in the first 24 hours. They're sucking nothing. They're just sucking and banjaxing your nipples. Do you use that word over here, banjaxed?
No, I haven't heard that, but I know what you mean.
You're tearing your nipples to shreds for no reason, right?
Yeah.
Don't do it. Now, these mums say, but I don't understand, because you put the baby back to bed, or can you put the baby back to bed sooner? Well, I can guarantee you, if you do 3 minutes wind, 3 minutes wind, 3 minutes the other side wind, 3 minutes, your baby's going to have pooed, farted, had a blowout. You'll change the clothes. When you go to change the clothes, here's another tip. Yeah. Open the nappy, let the fresh air in, and then close the nappy. Because when they get the fresh air, they start weeing.
Yep.
Lots of people open the nappy, rip it off, and they piss everywhere. No, open the nappy, count to about 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe I'm nervous, I'm doing it quickly. Shut the nappy again, and then you'll see the baby will be going, and then you shut the nappy and they go, and you realise they're peeing, their face goes all still and they're peeing. Some people would lift them up at that point, put them on a little potty, even on day. Let them have the pee. And then this is the other thing I do, which I didn't realise people don't do, because I just do it. I get the dirty pooey nappy. I after they've had their little pee, I wipe the poo off the bum with the dirty nappy. I then take I then take one baby wipe the rest of a little bit of the poo off. I then remove the dirty nappy and I put the clean nappy on. But the bum is still dirty, a little bit dirty. I then clean the bum in the nappy with the clean, and then one of the mums recently said to me, oh, you haven't cleaned the bum properly. And I'm like, no, because I haven't put the fresh nappy on, and I clean the bum properly. It's clean to a certain point, and then I finish cleaning it, because you can't clean it with the pooey nappy on, and if you take the nappy away, they're going to piss all over you. Anyhow, by the time you work all this out in the middle of the night, that hour and 15 minutes is gone. So people reading the book going, what do I do? If you are a super mum and you get your baby fed, changed, burped and back asleep, put them to bed sooner in the middle of the night than the hour and 15 minutes. But you probably find that you're not. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is the lights. You need to put lights on in the early days. Okay?
I found night lights were really good.
Yeah, but still, don't be scared. That's fine. You'll get used to night lights, and night lights will be really good, But if you think your baby's had a vomit and it's all over you, and you think it's on the floor, and you think turn the bloody lights on. In the first 1 or 2 weeks, you are not going to damage baby by putting the lights on. In fact, they might even have a better feed. So don't listen to what Tizzie Hall said, where she says keep all the lights off and dark and dim. You've got to use a certain amount of common sense. Don't trip over the foot of the cot or something because you've got the lights. Okay. So I think we will move on to a reader's questions.
Sure.
A topic, reader's questions, because we're going to try and keep these podcasts down to about the 30-something minute mark.
Okay. So I have one here from Kristen Matti. And she says, I've got a 9-week-old and have followed from birth. I would like some advice on changing to the next routine because they change to the next routine so frequently. My little one clings to the previous routine times. I want to know how to stretch and how to adjust if they won't stretch.
Was there more to that question?
There is more.
Okay, so now we'll start with that bit. Yes.
Okay.
So, because I remember you saying earlier you thought that this woman had asked a few questions. So first of all, don't forget to claim your gift voucher. So contact, how do you claim your gift voucher? Go to the Instagram page and find any of the tiles to do with this podcast and say, I'm the reader's question, and then we will contact you with your gift voucher. Okay. So if she's clinging to the first routine, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So it would depend. So if her baby is not sleeping all night, then she would need to go up routines. But if she thinks her baby's doing really well at night, she could stay on the earlier routine longer. If she finds that her baby is finding it difficult to have such a big adjustment to the next routine, try moving a bit slower. So I'm actually about to bring out new routines. So we have in the breastfeeding, we've got the 2 to 4 week routine, the 4 to 6 week routine. Well, in the support group, I've now put a 2 to 3 week, a 3 to 4 week, and I'm going to put a 4 to 5 week routine where it's a bit of a less quick move. So originally we had, for the first 6 weeks, you feed at the 3 hour to 3 hour 15 minute mark, and then you go to the 4 hour mark, which is what she'd be talking about.
Now.
So I am now changing it so it's done in 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
And that's what I found. I had to move 10 minute one of my children was super sensitive to it and I had to move every 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, I thought, well, now, because I'm looking at it from a newborn point of view, I'm thinking, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But if you're finding that your milk's really good and you've got enough, then it might be better to actually move from the 3 hours to 3 hours 15 minutes, and then a week later 3 hours and 25 minutes, and then a week later 3 hours. And so she may find that moving it that way is better. So I would say to her, she's probably finding that it's a big jump to the 4-hour feeds, or it could be the sleeps. Try moving it in smaller segments every couple of days.
So that's for breastfeeding?
Yes.
What about bottle?
So, bottle feeding, you pretty much do 4 hours from very early on. So again, if you found that your baby couldn't go the 4 hours, spend a couple of days just going up in a few minutes each day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the next part of her question?
So the next question was also, how do we deal with witching hour? It's such a struggle to do 7 p.m. bedtime with a baby who just wants to cluster feed.
So I would advise that you go back and listen to season 2, episode 1, because we talked about the 7 p.m. witching hour in that. And most people find that it's a good idea to introduce a bottle. 1 bottle a day is really, really important. So I would feed your baby before the bath, then do the bath, and then maybe do the bottle top-up feed or a bottle feed of expressed breast milk, which you've expressed before the 7 o'clock or before the 11 o'clock feed, or give your baby 1 bottle of formula a day at that point. It's really important that you do not chop and change when you give your baby formula. When you first give your baby formula, they become hungrier. It's this myth of giving them formula at the dream feed to get them sleep all night. The first couple of days of formula, they're going to wake up. It's like a what do we call it? The intolerance, false allergies.
Yes, yeah.
It's like you think they're allergic to it. You think they're intolerant because they start screaming because they're hungrier. So you could introduce the 1 bottle a day to try and help with that witching hour. But the witching hour happens, as I said in the last podcast, it is as if babies just need to get rid of a hormone. It's called exercising their lungs. It can be very hard to fix. And the more you cluster feed, it sounds like she's doing all these little feeds, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah,
she needs to try to stretch her baby out, even if she has to use a dummy to stretch her baby out at that time of night.
Well, one of the things I found was interesting, because I don't know if it might be in the books, but was, when you're breastfeeding, to burp every 3 minutes, and then on the bottles, every 30 mils for a newborn, and then, you could increase a little bit as you go up. But what I really liked is when you explained how if you're not winding properly throughout the day, that air builds up and the food is just going on top of the stomach. So that, yes, they will take less of a breastfeed or less of a bottle feed, and you think, okay, they're full. But what we're not seeing underneath is that it's just trapped on an air bubble. And
this exactly could be, it might not be a witching hour as such. She might be talking about the colic, which comes from exactly what you're saying. If she's not taking the time to wind her baby properly at each feed during the day, there will be a build-up of wind, and that causes this crying. And the cluster feeding, because the baby's really hungry, but it can't get the milk because there's no room in the tummy. Very good.
And I remember you talking about, and one of the things, like I used to make it a game actually in the middle of the night and set a timer, and I'd try and see if I could beat my times each time. Was sitting there trying to wind for, 10, 15 minutes after, and aiming for 2 burps each time. So, and seeing how much I could do and see if I could beat it the next time. That really helped as well, because that's what I found was that my baby was waking every hour or every 40 minutes after I put it down. I was like, why? It's not hungry. Yeah. And it was the trapped wind. Yeah. So, that was really...
And then that wobbly winding, which we've got the little video of, where that kind of works a bit, where you kind of...
Yeah.
But I'm still a fan of whacking them on the back, and I don't get it, so I do this. Can you hear that with the baby?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's because it's the palm of my hand is like a gap, but like one of my friends recently was like, "You're hurting the baby. You're hurting the baby." No, but they really, honestly thought I was, and I can't do anything else. I've done it all my life, and I remember my sister saying to me, with her now 22-year-old, well, she must be 22 or 23, saying, "You're gonna kill Erica. You're hitting her too hard." And I'm like, boom, 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 boom.
Well, I remember when I had the baby,
but she's not crying. And then as soon as I'd stop, meh, meh, and then boom, boom, they like it.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first had the babies and the doctors and how they're just maneuvering them around. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so rough. But yeah, when I met Zoe and her baby and stuff, and I was, and she's like you.
She's like, Tizzie, you were whacking as well.
But, it comes with experience. You know that they're not so fragile. And
I know.
And
I looked at a friend recently where I went to wrap a baby, and I remember her looking at me thinking, oh my God, what have you just done to the head? And it was like, it's fine. It's funny. I remember being in the special care baby unit, and I wanted to do a bath. I don't know. All I wanted to do was bath my baby. I really just wanted to bath them, and I was asking if I could bath them, and they were like, "Oh, we can't help you." And I'm like, "I don't need any help. I can do it myself." And anyhow, and then I started bathing the baby, and then they were just going, "Oh, how many kids have you had? What are you?" And I'm just like, and they obviously at that point they hadn't worked out that I've worked with babies all my life, and they were shocked. I'm just, and I think they were like, wow, like it was really weird. It was a really weird. I never realised that people didn't know how to bath babies, and all I wanted to do was bath the baby, and all they kept saying was, "Oh, you can't bath your baby because we need to have someone with you to show you how to do it, and you can do it at this time." And then they were like, "Oh, we're really sorry, we didn't have time to do the bath today." And I'm going, I just want to bath my baby, and then I said to them, "Can I just do it myself?" And they were like, "Oh, do you think?" I shouldn't say they. There was Lisa, and we got all their names recently. Somebody put them on Facebook. Mags, Lisa, Sally. Oh, I'll get there. I love them, and I'll get their names. I do know all their names, but for some reason we were calling them all Lisa the other day. Anyway, and I think they were just shocked that I could do it and I wanted to do it. And I was shocked that they thought that they had to help me. But it's so hard because I'm so confident. I find it strange when mums are anxious. Not strange, but...
Well, see, the thing is, because we haven't got our village anymore, some parent, your baby is the first baby you've ever come across. You know, you don't have the multitude of cousins because you don't all live nearby, and, your parents don't have multiple...
And even if you do, you're not allowed. It's so random. I was talking to somebody recently who's an airline pilot, and he was saying how even just being in the airlines has changed. Here's an example, right? People used to fly with a baby, and if they flied in business class or first class, the air hostesses pretty much did everything for them, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they would come along and say, "Oh, I'll take the baby and change it for you." Now they can't. They're not allowed to look at the baby's privates. Yes, it's great that we're helping our children. Yes, it's great that we're protecting our children. Yes, it's great that all of our kids know about privates and stuff, though it drives me insane because Kieran, won't get changed in front of anyone, and it's actually really hard. You've got a swimming pool at the house, we're all trying to get changed. He's like, "Oh, I can't," me. He won't let me see his privates because he's taught at school that no one can. And I'm like, I'm your mum. Let me get you changed. And of course I don't do that because I've got to respect the fact, But so even all that has changed. Now, we had someone visit the other day and the baby pooed, and Nathan said, "Oh, I'll take the baby and go and change it." And he just took the baby girl, not Benno, not, did I tell you that my neighbour's baby is called Ben?
No.
I kept calling Kylie, I kept calling Zoe's baby at the podcast Benno. Did you know that? I kept saying he was going to be Benno. He's going to be Ben. I was convinced she was going to call him Ben. And then my next door neighbour's baby had a baby and called it Ben. It's so funny. Anyway, it wasn't that baby. It was a girl baby. Nathan just took this baby, went off and changed it. And I thought and the mother was like, "Oh, you've got the perfect one." The grandmother was there as well. "Oh, you've got the perfect husband. Oh, you're so lucky." And I thought to myself, it's very unusual for men to even feel that they can do that now.
Yeah. Yep. I know with my husband at the time, he was very much like, I don't want to change her or bath her because, the idea of, touching, seems so absurd.
It's wrong. What's happened to us? We've gone from one extreme to the other. We need our village back. Anyway, that is a wrap. We are going to call this podcast The Village. That is a wrap for season 2, episode 2. Once again, please subscribe. Please leave us little notes. As Kylie pointed out last week, what was it exactly that you said? Pay it forward.
Yep. Jump on the support page or give us a great review on the podcast and let us know what you're thinking, what you want more.
You said if you give a review if you're not a review, you said if you leave your story as to how Save Our Sleep helped you, regardless of how bad it was or how hard it was, or even if you hate Save Our Sleep, it will help other people.
Yep.
Yes. So thank you all for listening. We will look forward to hearing from you again next week.
See you.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Save Our Sleep podcast, brought to you by the International Baby Whisperer Proprietary Limited. You will find more information about the Save Our Sleep philosophy, products, support, and how to watch the mini clips that accompany this podcast at saveoursleep.com. You may find the Save Our Sleep social media accounts by searching Tizzie Hall on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for all my how-to videos and to watch the podcasts. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate it and share it with your friends. I would like to thank Kylie Szabo for co-hosting, Fundamental Studios Geelong for their amazing recording studio, Nick Dale at Primer Films for this production, and most of all, you, the listeners. Without you, there would be no reason for this podcast. Please enjoy, stay safe, and Kylie and I will look forward to chatting with you again soon.